Hey, how's it going? So I wanted to put a couple of my thoughts down somewhere about my trip to Santiago, Chile. It was amazing. And yeah, I just think, I don't know, before I used to travel and I would think, oh, I'm gonna remember this forever. And maybe I would take pictures, back in the old days when you actually got the pictures developed, even then what do? Then they sit in a box or in those little envelopes and then but I would forget. I don't know what building that is, what city was that, and just maybe it's my memory, but I think probably all of us can relate. So anyway, then for a period of years I made myself promise that every time I did sort of a big trip, I would be certain to put a scrapbook together. So I would get the pictures developed and I would put the little I don't know, little tchotchkes like subway tickets or restaurant menus or just random things, from the trip that would remind me of things. Subway tokens, I don't know, whatever. You get the idea. So then I have this physical reminder of the trip. And so these days it's like, I don't know about that. Still think that's a good idea, but now here we are, and I thought I would just do a little bit of a blog. So this is a video just for fun, what the hell, and I was just thinking about it because I had a cool conversation with my friend Emily, who's in Colombia, and so while we were in the same continent for a little while, we talked a little bit about how it doesn't seem like it'd be that far away between Chile and Colombia. It's a long way. It's like from, I don't know, Chicago to Mexico City or something. It's a long way. So anyway, and then I'm wearing some things that I purchased in Chile, and I thought it'd be fun to just, yeah, put some thoughts down for me later, and maybe I'll share it with you. Who knows? So I got these copper and lapis lazuli earrings because copper, so mining is a big thing for Chile. That's like probably the foundation of their stronger economy. And lapis lazuli is a semi-precious stone, I guess, material that is also from Chile, and alpaca. So this is alpaca, and not a baby alpaca, which is even nicer, but it's just soft and pretty. So of course I had to buy some cool stuff while I was there, and it didn't go to most of the country. Didn't really see the deserts, didn't really go into the mountains, except for the city of Santiago, which by the way is like 8 million people, way bigger than people who haven't been there probably would guess. It's a very big city, lots of high buildings, and it's sort of in a little mountain valley, so it's beautiful. It's drier than I anticipated, so surprisingly my skin was great there because it was pretty warm. The weather is beautiful there. So we went March. When we left, there was snow, quite a bit of snow. We had a rough winter, right? Quite a bit of snow on the ground here in Nebraska, and it was, I think, 82 the day we landed, but it wasn't that hot, humid in Miami, 86, in the days it was in the 80s. It was just nice, and there was almost no wind. It was crazy. So it's very pretty, but it's a little drier, so there aren't as many lush plants and flowers. Doug said to me, I'm surprised there aren't more blooming flowers, more color. So in some cases the grass was a little bit dry and the plants were a little bit drier, but it's still very beautiful for a very urban city, and weather phenomenal. And so one of the first things that I said, and I would still describe it this way, which maybe sounds a little condescending or cheesy, but I still think it's accurate, is that Santiago feels to me like a combination or a cross between Mexico and Europe, which to me is a compliment. I mean, I really loved it, and I would absolutely go back. Except the travel is a bit of a bitch. It is a bit rough. So it's about an 18-hour situation from middle USA to Santiago. We went American through Dallas, so that's about as a direct route as you can go. And we had some cancellations and layovers and whatever, but still it's, with the time getting to the airport, by the time you get checked into your hotel, you're looking at about an 18-hour situation, which is a little bit longer than Europe. So that's probably closer to 12 hours, and that's a long time. And so the flights are overnight into Santiago, which is great, but it's great unless you can't sleep on the plane, which I didn't sleep nearly as much as would have been appropriate. So then it was like another 18 hours to kind of recover and get our bearings. So it's 2 or 3 hours time difference, which isn't too bad. And having grown up with family in California, being 2 hours off, I know that's just enough to get you a little bit screwed up when you travel and you come back, but not enough to, it's really not that much. What's 2 or 3 hours? What else? I got some little notes here. So some of the things I loved about it, besides the weather and the people. Oh my gosh, the people. So someone, excuse me, somebody at one point said Chileans or Chilenos and Chilenas are friendly. So people from Chile are typically very friendly. Well, people say that about people in the Midwest too, but they really, there's so much more for a big city like that. And we were mostly in nicer touristy areas, of course, but I really felt like people were more courteous, were more genuinely caring and friendly, and I saw so many coworkers greeting for the day or saying goodbye for the day, where they do the cheek kiss, the 2 or 3 times, and I mean really kissing each other on the cheeks, especially women greeting each other. And our housekeeper at the hotel, when she realized we were checking out, she gave me this big hug and a kiss. I mean, we couldn't even communicate. Like, my Spanish is a little I can get by in Mexico, but it's a little bit different in South America, much of it. In fact, instead of, they understood what I meant when I said habla inglés. I mean, they got it, but that's not how they would say it to another person to ask how they speak English, or habla español if they ask me. They call it castellano, I think. So it's Castilian Spanish, which is really interesting if you think about the history. So there's things that there's just so many things that, unless you've been, we tend not to know about South America. It's this continent that has just millions and millions and millions of people going about their lives, and they're living amazing lives and doing really cool things, and just having the struggles and the loves and the contributions. And in the US, it's really easy to not know much about them at all. So it was cool to get a refresher on all of that. Being a little bit of a geography and international studies nerd, even I had forgotten or didn't know so many things. Really feels like a melting pot in many ways. So they don't have a lot of immigration. We did go on a tour one day to Valparaiso, to the coast, because Santiago is not on the ocean. It's about 90 kilometers, I think, if I remember correctly, kind of through a couple mountains and valleys and whatever over to the sea. So Valparaiso and Viña del Mar and wine country and agricultural areas, and our tour guide was incredibly helpful. So he was living in Chicago and then moved back, and his dad I think his dad was from the US and was from the Midwest. So his English, so I thought he was American at first because he sounded, like me. But then the more I heard him talk, the more I realized, oh gosh, no, his mom was Chilean. So it was just really cool. He had this incredibly unique insight and told us lots of things about the history and how the people. And so they don't have a lot of immigration other than traditionally from Peru. And I did meet lots of Peruvians. The coffee shop where we went and did some writing several days, that I had the same gal that was helping me. And goodness, I'm forgetting her name. I think I wrote it down somewhere. Might have been Floor, but she was really cool. And yeah, it's a very cosmopolitan feeling, melting pot kind of feeling place. And it's interesting because people, um, even if I was speaking a little bit of Spanish, I wanted to purchase something, and I asked, um, Conto Cuesta, how much and whatever, they would guess that I was English. They would ask me if I was British or English, and I thought that was interesting that more of them didn't guess I was Estados Unidos, but hey, it works out. Uber is illegal. So our front desk guy, who we got to know a little bit, said, "Shh, keep your voice down. Uber is illegal here, and it's a really big deal. Like the taxi drivers, the government, it's like it's really illegal, and they will bust people for using Uber, and the Uber drivers know it, and so they make you sit in the front and act a little bit more like you're a friend or whatever. But it is widely used. I mean, you could Uber anywhere, just like here. You could get an Uber. They, you put it in your app. You see 6 of them driving around. You have a 1-minute wait. And or maybe 15 minutes if you're out in a different area or whatever. So it's widely used, which is interesting. So they have this whole black market Uber thing happening, but they're still capitalistic and they're still doing their thing, even though it's totally illegal. So shh, don't tell. What else? There are just some other fun things. So oh my gosh, I've never seen so many long tunnels in my life. So they have tons of toll roads, and their roads were amazing. The roads there were so good, and we found out why later. Yeah, so they have a lot of toll roads and the tunnels. They're probably because it's so mountainous and whatever. They have a lot of tunnels, so long, so long, and they drive like this close to the next car, which is a lot crazy, but that's also a little bit big city, when you go to New York, it's similar, maybe not quite that close, but yeah. Speaking of New York, their financial district, we hung out a couple different times. We were down there for various reasons. And the tallest building in South America is in an area, the financial district, the area of Santiago they call Sanhattan. So it's like Manhattan, but or Santiago, Sanhattan. So yeah, that's what they actually call it. So that's fun. Banking. Speaking of banks and financial stuff, if you're planning on going, make sure that your credit cards will work. You might want to get or your debit cards or whatever. Make sure that your banking stuff will work with the banks there, because there is no First National Bank, there is no Wells Fargo, there is, some of the major institutions that we have here and that seem to work fine in Europe. Many places, Mexico, Europe, I never had a problem, but we were like, oh crap, we can't find an ATM that even accepts our card other than in touristy areas. You have to find a one that allows foreigners. so that was kind of interesting. Something to know. What else? Oh, our trip to Valparaiso. That city is so unique. It's many hills. I just for some reason had a thought of Rome. It's like this hill and this hill. This hill had the Germans and this hill had the Croatians. They had a lot of Croatians there. I think I remember them talking about that. Lots of English, lots of Americans, tons of Spanish. Clearly from way back when. And so the architecture is a hodgepodge mix. It's such a unique city, Valparaiso. So the buildings are many of the buildings are from the 1800s and the early 1900s, and they have the funiculars or trying to think what else they're called. The the elevator that climbs the hill, basically, and you ride it instead of walking or driving up the really, really winding streets. You can take, like in Santiago, or in where am I thinking? In Greece. Not Santiago. In Greece, the place with the donkeys. So they don't have the donkeys in Valparaiso, but they have the funiculars. So they can take about 10 people at a time. So you wait and you wait and you wait, and then you go, and it's a pretty short trip, but it's very steep, and that was super fun. The lots of stairs, lots of narrow, winding alleyways, and just completely different architecture from building to building to building, house to house to house, and they're protected. It's a UNESCO heritage site. So the buildings are protected. So if they decide they want to modernize them or update, or they have to repair something, they have to replace, they have to put the new materials in that is the same as the old materials. So I've never seen so much corrugated tin or corrugated metal in my whole life. And to use that as cladding on the outside of a building, personally, I do not find attractive, but they have to use it because that's how many of the buildings were originally built. They had that as the roof material, or in some cases the exterior walls. Or so when they go to repair or upgrade, they have to stick with the metal, the corrugated metal. So they paint it, they get really creative. There's tons and tons and tons of murals. It's really beautiful. It's a very artistic community. Lots of people selling jewelry and handmade goods and paintings and playing music on the street. And it's a little bit of hippie vibe, but not too hippie. I mean, there's some hostels there. So if you're hippie and you're into it, enjoy. Otherwise, you don't necessarily have to go that side of town. But what else? Oh, we were there over St. Patrick's Day, and I saw not one reference to St. Patrick's Day. I didn't see anybody wearing green specifically. I mean, maybe if they were wearing green, they were just wearing green. No, I mean, there surely are some Irish pubs there, but I didn't seem like they had any beer gardens or the craziness that we're used to here. And that was so interesting to realize that not every city all over the whole world is going nuts with the, you know, kiss me, I'm Irish, wear green thing on St. Patty's Day. So yeah, kind of fun. Since Santiago and much of Chile actually is protected by oceans and mountains and desert, they don't have as many pests, disease or bugs or, you know, things like that. So traditionally, so makes them a little bit insulated from outside influences over the years. A lot of Catholicism there, a lot of traditional conservative ways of thinking. But of course, you know, now with satellite TV and cell phones and internet, I mean, it's just, it feels like anywhere else. But yeah, the history has a lot of that being insulated in that way has kept them protected in some really good ways, I think, from the rest of the world. Easter Island is part of Chile, so that is the Rapa Nui, which is a Polynesian culture. So that's where the giant heads, the Easter Island heads, I'm trying to think what they're called, Moai, giant Moai heads on Easter Island. So that's part of Chile also, which seems so disparate from the rest of the country, because it is, but yeah, it's kind of cool. So they use the Chilean peso, which, oh, I have it here. Chilean pesos, and right now it is 650, roughly 650, 660 Chilean pesos to $1. So this $10,000 Chilean peso banknote is like $65 basically. Is that right? No, yeah. You get what I'm saying. Anyway, I don't know. My brain's a little confused. So yeah, we have 1,000 peso. I mean, this is like the smallest bill, which is hilarious. And then there are some coins. And we had, you know, 20,000 peso notes. And so, yeah, what am I? I think I did that backwards. But anyway, you get the idea. Oh, what else is kind of cool? There are so many surprising little modern touches. So some of the actually all the restaurants we went to, if we wanted to use a debit card or credit card instead of using our cash, because, you know, you have to go to a cambio, an exchange house, and you pay for the exchange to get the local currency, and then if you bring any of it home, which whoops, couldn't spend this at the airport because they didn't allow water on the plane, by the way. Note to self. I think that might be a recent thing and probably won't last forever, but no water on the plane. Yeah, for a 10-hour, 11-hour flight or whatever. They did serve us a little bit of water, but you know, you bring the money back and then you have to pay again to get it changed. So just something to think about. So we didn't want to change over all of our cash necessarily. So when we went to use a credit or debit card, they bring the little machines to you. So they use the iPads and stuff some, but they have these, I don't know if it's potentially government issued, because they all were using the exact same machine. Either that or there's not a lot of competition in the credit card processing space. So yeah, and then my husband mentioned several times, I mean, even when we went to the grocery store, so we went to this place called Totas, and they have this insanely neon yellow green branding, which is awesome. So we went to the grocery store and used a card, and he would have to write his passport number on the receipt, you know, when you sign for the card charge. So that was kind of different. But they have the little machines where you stick the card in and you key in, and the tip is included, 10% standard for wait staff, but they will ask you if it's okay if tip is included. And I can't imagine anybody saying no, but maybe people do say no, or they say no, and then they leave cash instead. I don't know. I mean, it's basically included. It's taken care of. You don't necessarily give them any more than that. So it was kind of nice because I did do a little bit of research on that instead of guessing and feeling like shit, you know, the first time. You're like, oh crap, what do we tip, you know, or how much do we leave the hotel maid on the pillow? You know, so you want to do a little bit of homework on that before you put yourself in a stupid foot and mouth situation or whatever. It was kind of fun. We went on that tour that I mentioned. We also went to a vineyard called Veramonte, and it was just beautiful. It was incredible. Oh, and Conchi Toro, which I buy. I mean, I buy Chilean wine a lot, and so I learned that 90% of their wine production is exported. A lot of it goes to the U.S., some to Europe, some all over. So I laughingly said, I've been doing my part to support the Chilean economy. And so we went to Veramonte, and it was really cool. But on that trip, there were only 5 of us. So Doug and I from the U.S., the driver who's native Chilean, our tour guide I mentioned, whose mom was American, Midwest, or the other way around. His dad was, you get it, he was born in Chile, raised in Santiago. And then there were 2 Bulgarians on the trip with us and 1 Canadian guy. And he was there for work. The Bulgarians were on a total South American cruise. They had been to Argentina and Brazil, and they did a cruise around, and then they were spending some time in Chile before they flew home. And it was really cool to hear their take on Chile and Santiago, and then that trip we took to Valparaiso, Viña del Mar, and I'm trying to think of the Casablanca Valley with the Veramonte Vineyard. They said Chile was the best of those. They said people were more friendly. One of the things they really liked about at least Santiago and the area was the way the city is organized. It's very different from any place that any of us had seen. And Doug and I were just talking about this last night too, because he's still there. He went into this market, and this is Emil, the Bulgarian guy, was saying, it's so organized the way they have, you know, if you want to go for dentist treatments, you go to a certain part of town, and there's dentists all over in that. Our tour guide called them communes, but I don't think that was quite the right word. Districts. I would say districts of the city. So I think there were maybe 21 districts all around Santiago, and they each had their own mayor, and so it's more like a, you know, that kind of situation. So of all of those, there's one that is really known for dentists, and one that's really known for podiatrists, and one that's really known for kinesthesiologists or chiropractors. And so Doug went into this market near the downtown area, and they have, it's like a warren of just tons of market stalls, tiny little market stalls. As we said, one whole aisle is shoelaces. It's all these different vendors selling just shoelaces. So if you need shoelaces, you know exactly where to go. But the problem is you have to go like all the way across town. I mean, you probably could get them in the grocery store or whatever. Or if you want shoe repair, mobile phone repair, you know, things like that. So there's a lot of positive to that idea. Obviously, it makes things very price competitive, so it keeps the prices down. But then, is it inconvenient for the people who have to go all the way across town to get there? You know, maybe it's not that big of a deal because there is an incredible public transportation system in Santiago. They have, I think I read somewhere that they have the biggest subway or metro system, one of the biggest in the world, and they have a lot of buses, and obviously they have tons of taxis, and you can Uber and you can walk. It felt very safe. We did read that there is a problem with pickpocketing, but you know, I think that's true anywhere. You know, if you got your cash out or your wallet's hanging out of your back pocket and you're in a touristy area, you're just asking for trouble. So I wouldn't do that even in a place that people said is like super safe, but it felt very clean and safe, and really enjoyed it. I would definitely go back. So those are some of my thoughts on Santiago, Chile. Kind of rambled a bit, but wanted to capture some of that before I forgot. So, oh, the food. One more thing. The food was amazing. Really good quality meat. And if you know me really well, if you know that sometimes I do a little bit more of a vegan diet. They do eat a lot of meat there. I did also see some vegan options on the menus. Lots of veggies, so lots of sautéed in olive oil veg, lots of potato products, and just really high quality beef. I mean, there's a lot of really good beef in South America. We think, oh, the U.S. has the best beef in the world. Well, yeah, maybe. We have some of the best beef. So some chicken dishes, lots of pasta. I mean, they must really love their pasta because it was everywhere, you know. I mean, Italian restaurants and Italian-inspired pasta was kind of everywhere. The bread is amazing. It felt like that was absolutely part of the olden the European Spaniard contribution was the daily fresh bread. The hotels had just incredibly good bread. Trying to think what else. Prices, we really felt the prices were better than if we were eating out every night here in Omaha, which I think a lot of people would be surprised about because I heard it said that Santiago is the most expensive city in South America to live in, the cost of living. But I don't know that I saw real evidence of that. The housing must be pretty expensive, and maybe the transportation, and maybe with all those tolls on the highways. But the food, the grocery prices were really quite reasonable. A little bit less than I was expecting, less than what I would have expected to see in Europe for sure. It's kind of hard to say because the exchange rate is so different, but probably more on par with what we've seen in touristy areas in Mexico. So for what it's worth, thought that was interesting. The food is delicious. The people were friendly, and I would highly recommend it if you don't mind the extensive travel and a little bit of recovery period. So there you go, Santiago, Chile. Check it out. Thanks. Bye.